a lot of contractors are today running very similar to how they were running when they were much, much smaller, much less advanced.
Mhm.
And so they're holding on to a lot of old shortcuts, I'm going to call them, to doing things the right way. So like examples like, walk me through your estimating process. Well, we just kind of have like this factor. We take a look at square footage and we just apply this factor. We find that usually makes us money out in the field. And I'm like, that's concerning. I understand, like, that's great if your shortcut proves true consistently, but are you checking your shortcut? And when you're unhappy with your GP results, maybe that is where you should start, is breaking down that shortcut that you guys built years ago when it was easy, and take a much more scientific approach to estimating.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Construction MF'ers. I'm excited to bring a great guest today from Well-Built Consulting. He is the founder and president, Chad Prinkey. He's been a friend of mine now for the better part of a year. We've met on a show. I met on LinkedIn. I've done his show. He's been a great advocate. I've learned a lot. I've seen him do quite great things so far, and his advice is spot on. And I wanted to bring him on the show to help you all. You're going to hear things from goal setting. You're going to hear best practices for general contractors, subcontractors, gross profit, net profit. We're going to dive into all kinds of great topics, and I'm excited to bring that to you. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate being here. I'm happy to get in a fun conversation with you today.
Yes, I am excited to have you on because I think you are in a very unique position where you can help a lot of people gain some perspective for what you do and how you do it. But also they can gain perspective that A, they're not alone, B, there's solutions to the problems, C, people have figured it out and done it, and you can help guide and coach through that. So before we jump into that, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about Well-Built Consulting and yourself?
Yeah, so we are a consulting firm that focuses 100% on the building industry. Most of our clients are general contractors, subcontractors. We have some developer clients, which is kind of cool to be able to see that aspect of the world too, and move from the top down in our work with our clients. Our core business is helping companies to develop their strategic business plan and everything that entails. Literally, you name it, what goes into the strategic business plan, whether it's growth goals or acquisition targets or preparing for sale or technology expansion or all those different types of things. We help them to design their strategic plan for their business. And then our team of experts are partners in the execution of that plan. So we're either coaching people on how to execute it, we're getting our hands dirty with them and executing it with them, or in some cases we're just doing it. We're saying, hey, we'll get that done and we'll give you an update in a few months. So that is our business. We work with clients all over North America, and we're fast growing, doubling every year. It's a lot of fun. We've been very fortunate in our first 3 years of business.
Well, so as you know, I came out of the med device side, and we used to medical device sales, big companies, and we used to hire consultants all the time. My dad, having been in construction his whole life, had his own business, worked for other businesses. Never once did he come home and tell me, hey, I hired this consultant today, or hey, the company hired this consultant and we're better off. So it's not something I think a lot of people understand in the construction world, maybe at every single level, particularly in the commercial subcontractor level. And again, even some of your regional GCs that are organizing their own projects, maybe they're self-performing some. So tell me, like, how does a construction subcontractor, contractor, general contractor say, you know what, like, where do I plug this consultant in? Like, what's missing or what problem am I trying to solve? And how do they know that, you know what, I can go to Chad.
So I started laughing as you were talking about that because I totally agree with you. And what I realized, even just as you were talking, is that, our customers, like our great customers, don't want to hire consultants. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny. Our best customers aren't, frequent hirers of third parties to come in and help their business. And we are so different from what people think of when they think of consultants. I just was told actually last week by a client of ours that we've been working with now for about 6 months. And he said, in my past world, we hired a consultant, and when I heard we were hiring you guys, I got really bummed out because I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck. He said, because my experience with consultants is they come in and they tell us stuff we totally already know, and then they say good luck and let us know how it goes, and we're here for you, or
Yeah.
something along those lines, but they don't actually do anything. And he goes, you guys came in and you immediately just got to work. We told you where the problems were. You said, yep, we see those same problems, let's just get to solving them and stop talking about it. And he goes, like, over 6 months we've actually gotten stuff done, so thank you. And I think that um maybe doesn't fully answer your question, but I think what happens is you realize that we have any number of indicators of something that we're not happy with in our business. Our profit margins aren't where they should be. Our GP isn't right. We're having a hard time keeping our people, whatever that sort of looks like. And you kind of have the realization that you don't have either the time or the expertise to become experts in solving those issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than burning your extremely valuable time as the owner of a concrete contractor, trying to figure out how to resolve issues with employee retention, you look for external help. And then I guess the only problem is that a lot of the external help you're going to find is going to be of the typical ilk of like, hey, here's your problem, good luck.
Yeah.
And you don't end up much further along. So I think it's important to make sure that you're not just looking for somebody who will tell you what the problems are, but somebody who's fully prepared to roll up their sleeves and get the result with you.
Right.
Spend time as a member of your team and get the result with you. So
So
that's
you make a good point on that, because I think what happens is, and I guess I'm speaking from experience myself with consultants, but also in talking to commercial contractors, I've heard this before in a similar tone, and they say, you know what? Yeah, I know exactly this problem. I'd love it to be better. And if I could hire someone to come in and fix it, I would. And matter of fact, I always say to them, you know what you did? You felt like you had a financial problem, so you hired a controller. You felt like you had a project management problem, so you
that's
hired a
right.
project manager. And if you don't train and properly understand the problem and fix it, that person's just another person. They're like, yeah, you're right. Like, okay. Well, consulting is kind of analogous to that. If you don't provide the information, if you don't know what your problem is you're trying to solve, you just hire somebody, then you feel like you did something because you committed to some type of action. But what is a specific thing that happens in most contractors' businesses? Whereas if you walk in, you can see that problem, identify that problem, and they can immediately feel that relief. Like, is there in a list of all the common areas of things you could work on and help, is there one that someone listening to us right now have this conversation they could resonate with? Yeah, you know what? I do have that pain point. And I didn't realize I could hire somebody like that to come in. Because I think if you get an easy win in your world, it opens up the doors to being able to fix even some of the more complex problems.
So I think the symptom that people will bring is most commonly is a disappointing net profit outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple. They say we're not making what we ought to be making. They're paying attention to the statistics that come out from the CMFA and their CFMA. Sorry about that. And they look at that and they think, we're underperforming what the market says we should be, achieving. And so they come to us with a net profit problem. I think the realities of that, as we start to figure out what's driving it, it's almost always that they're not driving enough gross profit. And that the problem is sometimes they need more business, but more often they need better business, and they need to be better at performing that work at or above budget. They see a lot of slip in their gross profit from the estimate to the field. There's a disconnect where their jobs, they have one or two nightmare jobs a year that just totally destroy their books,
Mhm.
right? Things like that. So, sorry, if I can then re-simplify, if the thing they bring us is net profit problems, the thing that we really most often solve, because it's the driver of that, is slippage in gross profit, which comes from a combination of bidding it wrong, getting bad feedback from the field back to estimating so that we learn from our mistakes, going after the wrong work. But all of these things revolve around, gross profit problems.
So let's drill down on that a little bit, because you know what, in our world at mobilization funding, we see a lot of cash flow. I hear the same thing. Like, like one of the most common things that I hear folks say to me is like, Scott, I've grown this business now. I've been in business 5 years, 10 years, but you know what? I'm still working for the same paycheck. Like the check I got in the first weeks I was here is the same check I'm getting right now. And I feel like no matter how much money we make, I'm pouring it back in this business and I don't ever get any of it. And I'm like, well, that's interesting because I've heard that before, but what do you think drives at that? And a lot of times they're very candid. They just say, I don't know. I think we're having bad jobs. I'm not sure if it's estimate. They hit all the topics you just mentioned. But what I find is fascinating, and where I think the crux of it all is, and I'm wondering, I'm going to ask your opinion on this, is I think it's the type of information that the contractor is able to see or receive and in a format that they can make decisions off of. And because when we take the little segment of what we're going to help them with, like a project cash flow, so one specific project that we're going to help them with on a loan, we build that entire cash flow out. And sometimes it works perfect. Other times they might have thought they had a higher margin than they actually do, or they thought that of the cost, they only needed to invest a certain amount of dollars to get that project started, but they find out they need a lot more, or sometimes they find out they need a lot less. My point anyway is when we give them that information, what they can do really well is make amazing decisions, execute, and fix the problem, which was fascinating to me. And it's always been that way in our business. I'm always fascinated, like no matter what level contractor, size business or not, when we hand them the information and show them what the problem is, they always have solutions and they're always able to go execute them. And I wonder if my theory is true in your world too, if you think that's the case.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So first off, your focus on cash and making sure that companies are positioning themselves to be not just successful on paper but successful in their bank account, right, is definitely a passion that we share, and something we spend a lot of time looking at as well. I think related to the GP issue, there are uh, a lot of contractors are today running very similar to how they were running when they were much, much smaller, much less advanced.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're holding on to a lot of old shortcuts, I'm going to call them, to doing things the right way. So like examples like, walk me through your estimating process. Well, we just kind of have like this factor. We take a look at square footage and we just apply this factor. We find that usually makes us money out in the field. And I'm like, that's concerning. I understand, like, that's great if your shortcut proves true consistently, but are you checking your shortcut? And when you're unhappy with your GP results, maybe that is where you should start, is breaking down that shortcut that you guys built years ago when it was easy, and take a much more scientific approach to estimating. But I think it's, are you estimating price? There's my thumbs up. I don't know why my computer does that, Scott.
That's awesome. How did you do that?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I'd teach you if I knew.
It's just a fancy thumb just shows up in the middle of your screen. I love that.
You can thank Apple, everybody in Cupertino. But are you estimating things in a way that fully translates into something that can be tracked and managed in the field? Even if you're not estimating that way to win the work, like I'm okay with that, but post winning the work, you better re-estimate the project, break it down into a schedule of values that's fully manageable, and break it down by feature of work so that you can actually track how you're performing on that job feature by feature as you go. Because what way too often happens is we find out that we have a problem on a job halfway or further through the job when the whip stops making sense.
Mhm.
Right? Well, all of a sudden we're like, whoa, we're way overbuilt there. What's going on? Right? Or we're way underbuilt. Either one of those points to different problems, that you could have on a project, but you start realizing you have a problem far too late. So I think it does come back to the processes that you're using to get immediate feedback on labor, materials, subcontracting costs, and schedule,
Right.
so that you're able to get that data ideally at your fingertips, at worst monthly. But monthly, depending on your trade, could be depending on your business, could be a long time.
Yeah.
If you're a siding contractor, monthly's not going to cut it. You got to see
Mhm.
that weekly,
Well,
right?
it's funny you say that. We built our cash flow tracker originally to look at monthly because you bill monthly and your costs are monthly. But
Sure.
you order things weekly. Your
Yep.
labor's out there weekly, and your terms are if you order something on the 5th of the month, it's due the next 5th of the month. You can't bill for it to the 30th of the month, which is the next 30th of the month. So if you don't track it weekly, we immediately blew up the monthly model within like 6 months and realized this is a problem for the exact reasons I just mentioned. And we created a weekly model, which then tracks weekly. And so we can tell and show a customer on a routine basis right up front exactly what it's going to look like week to week because
Yep.
they plan it week to week also. But you know what
Yeah.
it was? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's right. And what we always talk about, so what tools are there out there? And there are a lot of tools out there to help you to manage this stuff, but uh, start with the process. And then I'm always an advocate of like, let's build the process, let's do it the hard way. Let's do it the slow, hard way for a minute, just to prove that the process makes sense and works. Spreadsheets and whatever it takes to just get us into the habit of saying, okay, let's track labor hours against this feature of work today
Mhm.
and feed that information up. And let's use that for a month, 2 months, 3 months. Eventually, we're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on some system that's going to, create a ton of efficiency, and you'll be very happy you have. But way too often, people are jumping then right to like, we need a system for this. And if they don't have the process in place, the system is a waste.
Right. Because even if you buy the system, it makes you feel good for a minute. You acted on
Totally.
the problem, but then the problem still exists, and now you got the system, so then you get frustrated.
Yep.
But one of the things I think that like, if I was going to fine tune some of these problems, if every commercial contractor knew the gross profit and net profit by customer, by project size, by timeline, like are you good at 2 month projects or are you good at 6 month projects? And what's the difference? And you just gave them all that hard fact data, that kind of information, those conclusions that can be drawn from there is where I was talking about the contractors know exactly like, wait, why? You're telling me my favorite customer that I did all this work for, that I go out of my way for, is the customer that I make the least amount of money on, and they're twice the revenue. Like, why don't I just do more projects with this person over here? That not when I make more. Do I really make twice the amount of profit over there? I'm like, yeah, you did half the amount of volume for more profit than you did on the largest volume for all the profit. Like, well, I don't even have problems with that customer. I only have problems with the big customer. I'm like, there you go. What do you think you should do about it? Well, I'm going to start bidding the bigger jobs with more profit then to make them worth it. Like, there you go. But without the information, you don't know. And I think that's what you could put in place for people is the systems that will provide that type of data and information in real time or even monthly time or even project by project so that then folks can execute new decisions.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And oftentimes, uh, the easy the first gut reaction of like we're going to stop working with them or we're going to is the wrong answer. There are all kinds of other ways to handle that. Maybe what you just discovered is that when you're working with them, you're just not charging enough. That great customer, a part of the problem is because you like them so much, you're not doing your own due diligence in charging what you should be charging and capturing all your costs and things like that. And the truth is, if you just sat down with them and had a heart to heart and said, "Hey, I've been doing this wrong, and I hope that you'll allow me to, do this in a different way moving forward and still provide you an amazing customer experience," that we can still work together.
Yeah. And so
What I wouldn't do is, look at the data and make a
fired.
knee-jerk
Yeah.
reaction. Right.
No, and
Exactly.
you don't need to do that because they want you on the job. You have a great relationship with them. You just need to fine tune it. And sometimes it's as simple as realizing projects that you get paid 45 days on instead of 30, you do need to charge more because they cost more. They're going to be less profitable. You have to put more dollars out onto the job. If it's a municipality, a city, a state, a federal contract, you have to bid more, even though the conceptual theory in construction is that you have to bid less. Maybe for your business, for you to maintain the profits you need to maintain, you shouldn't do federal work because it's too low margin and takes too much cost. Maybe you should bid higher or more volume to make sure you get. There's a million things, but the data and the systems that I think a good consulting group like yourself can put in place will, I guess what I want people to hear is be encouraged that when you're given the right data, you'll make the right decisions and you can lean into them very carefully and or very strongly and confidently. And that's the type of information that if you think about hiring a consultant to get the right data in front of you so you can make the decisions best, that's how I would encourage people to think about hiring a consultant.
It's good advice.
Yeah. All right. I want to switch gears on you. You and I met on LinkedIn through a mutual friend, Stacy Holsinger, who we both love. And you guys do a great show that I think if I'm correct, you're going to do 36 episodes this year of the Morning Huddle, which is a LinkedIn Live event that you do. Talk to me about that.
So it all really started when Stacy, who is a longtime friend of mine, came to me and she said, "Hey, I'd like to produce a webinar series for you." And I was like, that's awesome. Why? And she said, "Yeah, no, I just think we could put together something really cool. It could be something that, helps me to get that kind of brand experience and experience with that kind of media and would help you to, promote your brand. I think it's a win-win." I was like, "That's cool. Let's give it a shot." So Stacy starts reaching out to her network, and the next thing you know, she's got like 14 people lined up, and she's like, "Sorry, I couldn't stop at 6. Everybody said yes. Yeah, everybody wants to have this conversation." So here we are. We've done 52 or 53 episodes or something like that over the past couple of years. And this year we're stepping it up to 36. What we've done with the Morning Huddle is it's a platform for people who are creating positive change in the construction industry to come in and share what they're passionate about, and for us and our listeners to get fired up about what we hear going on. And so we're tackling everything from workforce development topics to improving your culture and embracing AI or fighting AI, depending on what's going on. There's all kinds of interesting discussions that are happening, and we've been very fortunate that we have the platform is resonating with people, and people, we have lots of guests who come to us who say, "I have a story I'd like to tell," and our audience is growing and pretty consistently. I find that when I run into people in the industry, if I go to a conference or whatever else, that they'll have some point of reference to that and enjoying that show, which has been gratifying to see. I'm sure you can relate, on that level. It's a lot of fun. So that's what we're doing.
I thought it was cool. I thought it was a great different type of show to do. I mean, like it's live, so it's more natural. It can make mistakes. It's not overly produced with all the perfect stuff going. So but it's also a cool, casual conversation. And I think, early in the morning, you get people are in their car, they can hear it. I love the name. The Morning Huddle's fantastic. And it was great questions and answers. I mean, for me, you've had stuff on there related to workforce labor, gross profit, net profit, ways to bidding, ways to estimating, and bringing on some large guests, people with a lot of experience to leverage, which I also think is a cool thing for people to think about utilizing your services or a consultant of kind. Is you get, just like an accountant or a lawyer, you get to leverage the litany of experience that you have across many, many, many different companies. So you've seen that mistake before, but you've also seen people fix that mistake before. And you might have seen that mistake fixed 5, 6 different ways. All are effective, and which way is more effective for the person you're in front of? I think too often business owners in general, and especially in construction, you think that your problem is only you. You're making a mistake. You're the one that's screwing up. Everyone else is better off, and no one's been through that before, or everyone's going through that, and so there's no fix. But the reality is there is a fix. There's people out there that dealt with that problem, made it work, fixed it for their business, and are thriving and very successful. And I think you could be a conduit to that with some of the experience.
Yeah, it's in fact, I agree with that point so much that you know, I and they know who they are. I've worked with some clients over the years where I have literally gone to them and just said, you know, hey, I know you brought me in to do this and this and this, and I hope that I know you're happy with those results. So, and I was happy to do it. But man, you've taught me so much about these other things that I wasn't, you know, expecting. And I just wanted to say thank you. You know, that's it's been such a mutually beneficial relationship. Where you know, I've learned a ton from, you know, what to do and obviously a lot of what not to do by working with, I think at last count, uh, nearly, it's close to 200 contractors over my 16 years doing this work.
Yeah. So Chad, tell me where you got your passion for the construction industry and why you stay so passionate about it.
I came from I'm the youngest of 3 boys, and I'm younger by a good bit. From my middle brother is 7 years older than me, and my oldest is 11. And my middle brother, when he was about 21, he finished a construction management degree at Delhi University in New York, and decided to move to Maryland, which is where I was still in high school with my parents at that time, and started his own construction company, living in my parents' basement, started his own construction company, bought, you know, truck tools, took basically his whole savings and started his own residential remodeling construction company. He's a mason by background and a carpenter as well. He actually won, if people who know the VICA competitions, he won the VICA masonry competition in like 95. He was #1 in the country type of deal. So he's incredible with his hands. He's an artisan. So I was a very lost teenager. You know what I mean? Like I should say, I was getting straight A's, but I also wasn't paying much attention to life. You know, it just was, I was just kind of, you know, doing whatever. I was floating around, and I certainly didn't know what hard work was about. And my brother was like, "Hey man, I need a laborer." And the next thing I knew, I was, you know, mixing mortar and carrying shingles and you know, stacking brick and block. And he was just taking on all these jobs, and I was, you know, grunting it out and making that happen. I did that work as a laborer, and then kind of like as a terrible carpenter and mason. But I did that work for all the way through college. So I did it from the time I was like 16 to the time I was 22 or 21, whenever the heck you finish college. And I knew enough to know that I respected the hell out of the people who do that work, that I was definitely wired to appreciate and you know, kind of see the honesty and integrity in building, and how getting paid to build something just made sense to me. But then I also wasn't cut out to do the work. I was just also not, you know, capable at that level to do the work. So I ended up getting into sales, and was really strong in that, and ended up being recruited to a sales training company that focused on business to business sales training, you know, selling sales training to other companies. And so you had to kind of start from scratch. You had to start from somewhere, start selling sales training, who you're going to sell to. And the only industry that made sense to me was construction. And these, as I've been saying, since then, like this is the world that I get. It's the only one I really understand. And building things in exchange for money is a damn reasonable way to make a living.
Yeah,
But what
no
I also
doubt.
found, right? And what I also found is that these are people who, um, the industry is often not fair. And there are a lot of less than ethical practices that go on. And so you asked me, how do I stay passionate? What keeps me moving? And I really think it's this. I I want to help the people in the building industry to be able to make all the money that they want to make while being able to look themselves in the mirror and sleep like a baby at night,
Yeah.
because they're doing it all in a way that makes them proud of themselves. And there really is a way to do it, and it is kind of the hard way. But once you get it, once you're bought into a lot of the stuff that we implement, a lot of stuff that we teach and implement, which by the way just comes from the best performing contractors in the country that I've had a chance to spend time with. Once we have a chance to install that stuff, that's what starts to happen. You're making a lot of money. You're proud of how you're doing it. It's something that you can really uh, it becomes the dream
Yeah.
as opposed to the, I
Well,
don't want to say nightmare, but you know what I mean.
yeah. Well, you make a great point, man. And I think this is something that people should really pay attention to. And you sort of touched on it, but it's super important. Anything that you can be truly happy with doing, that you're helping people do, and you're sleeping like a baby at night while you're doing it, and you're making the money that you want set out to do and deserve, is hard.
Yeah.
There is no easy way to do that. So
Yeah. The shortcut is the thing that makes you feel bad about yourself.
yes, you're not going to be prideful about what you built and what you accomplished when you did something easy or someone handed it to you. So avoiding the hard path is, quite frankly, one of the biggest mistakes I think anybody in business can make. You should just embrace the hard path, choose it every time, and just know that going through that is where you're going to build and learn everything you need to know through the experience and the knowledge, so that you can then get to the other side of that in a position as you keep moving along that gets more comfortable and you're more aware of, and you're more equipped to manage, and you're more equipped to succeed in, and you're more equipped to help people through. All of those things are built through the hard path. There's nothing worse than watching somebody get dropped onto what was otherwise very successful without any skills or attributes to know how to get that got them there that they need, and watch them crumble and fail. Like, that is one of the saddest things that can happen, and no one would feel good about themselves doing that.
Yeah, it's along these lines, Scott. I'll tell you, I don't know. I wish I could attribute this quote. I'm like halfway thinking I could just Google this and you can edit it later. But the quote is or so, my best version of the quote is, hard early, easy late, right?
Yeah.
Hard early, easy late. That the if you put in the hard work up front, that everything later gets easier. And it's very, very rare, but it does happen where it's one of my favorite experiences. They're not our most common client, okay? But sometimes we will have a 6 employee general contractor reach out to us and they'll say, look, we want to set ourselves up right from the start. And we want to partner with you guys to help us to build all of our processes and help us to get our culture established and help it. And it's a huge expense in percent as compared to what they're making. It's a massive investment for them. And it always makes me nervous. I'm like, you guys sure you want to do this with a consultant? Because it's a lot of money. But when they make that investment at that stage in business, when the owners aren't even really paying themselves what they
Mhm.
need, at that stage, when they make that investment, they fly. And I can make the list of those companies now. If I had their permission, I would. But there are some companies that you would know. I'm confident that that I was a part of working with, and my team was a part of working with. That in their very earliest stages set themselves up for just explosive growth. Way more often, we're coming into businesses that are maybe had a bunch of easy early, hard late
Yeah.
situations, right? And now they're in the middle of tough times, even though they're, 150 employees, they're in the middle of dealing with some pretty tough times that were all kind of stemmed from not doing things the right way from the start. So we
Well,
have angry employees that are quitting, and we have angry customers that are firing us, and we have, like these types of things. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, that type of stuff will happen if we don't do things the right way.
And I think what you're describing is, to use a construction analogy, is you're building a perfect foundation that you're going to put a big building on top of. And
Yep.
if you have a poor foundation, obviously the building process is hard for everybody. Every single trade that comes on top of a foundation that's not built well is going to have a hard time with a structure. And so if you then you chase that problem the entire project, well, it's no different. If you create a strong foundation for your business financially, people, core values, leadership, and you be patient and you build the skills and you get the knowledge and you learn from you in this case versus having to go through years of experience and the school of hard knocks, you can gain some quicker, faster experience through you. You're building just a strong foundation. So then when you decide to go, you can be confident that you have the systems in place. Your infrastructure is going to be good. You're putting all the people on top of great systems. You're putting projects on top of great systems. And now your business is strong. It might take 3 or 4 years and it might not be fun, but you'll move quickly.
And when you do emerge from that, it's, sustainable,
Yeah.
real gains, not that sort of, we just doubled in revenue, but I'm not paying myself any more money as the owner, right? We just doubled in revenue, but I've got no more money to show for it.
Right. Well, you know what
That's
else you have then is you have a great company, not just a bunch of great projects and some bad projects. And that's the difference.
totally agree. There are some universal, going back to one of the things you brought up earlier, there are 100 ways to do it right,
Mhm.
but they're based on some principles. And those principles are pretty universal. So if you nail those principles, part of what our team works hard to do is to make sure those principles are customized to meet you with your belief systems, your culture, your unique market, geography, all those different types of things, because there are just 100 right ways to do it. But you got to make sure that it's rooted in some universal true principles for running an effective construction business.
And it's funny too, because I have a mentor, his name's Andy Frisilla. And what he said was, you have to, it's all hard. You have to choose which hard you want to participate in, but don't think you get to avoid the hard. So you can move fast and maybe it's easy doing a couple of projects and then you're going to suffer through the hard later, or you can suffer through the hard first. You can get into business and do things the right way because that's hard, or you can not and have a bunch of employee issues and continue to hire new people. That's hard. It's all hard. So you
It's
just
all
really
hard.
have to choose which hard you want to participate in. And when he said that, the first time I heard him say that, I was like, you know what? You're right. It makes it so much easier to make the investment early and take the delayed gratification of compensation or size or growth, but know that you're struggling there so that you don't have to struggle with a constant transactional business where you just have to search for the next transaction and you make one, you lose one, you make one, you lose one, you make one, lose one. You can't grow on that.
That's right.
I love it. So I'm
Amen.
going to change some gears on you now.
Go for it.
You are writing a book. I think you've finished it and you're going to launch this thing out here early in January. What is the book about and what can people expect?
Okay, so the book is called Well Built. You know what? I'm battling with my publisher right now. Which, by the way, they're awesome people. When I say battling, I mean they're smart and they disagree with me on stuff, and so we're hashing stuff out, which I think is
Good.
great. But right now, I think the name of the book is Well Built. Period. And with a subtitle, something along the lines of how the top 2% of contractors are outperforming the market in terms of happy customers, happy revenue. There's the thumbs up. Happy customers, better profit, better revenue, and happier employees. So it's a combination. It's kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier is I've been amassing both through my own studies. I know I've read a lot of books. I don't know how many, but through my own studies, through my own education, seminars, and different construction courses that I put myself through, construction business courses, and also the hands-on experience working with these 200 contractors over time. I've taken and organized this into a system that is a step-by-step, start here, follow this system all the way through, and maintain this system as you run your construction business to be successful. So it's a collection of principles organized into a chronological system that, if you follow, is proven to turn into business success.
I love it.
So that's what the book is.
When am I going to be able to get a copy of this book?
Scott, I don't know. I think so you're right. It is completely done being written, but the process of getting this book through, the whole publishing experience, this is my first go round. It's been fun. It really has been fun. It's also been surprising and a little bit frustrating along the way. But I believe it will be available on Kindle and audiobook in the spring, like early spring, and the physical books will probably be around in like May, somewhere along those lines. So
Nice.
that appears to be the timeline for formal launch.
Well, wait till you see how fun it is to do book launch and plan book launch.
Well, so that's one of the things that they're just doing, which also goes into
They're going to do it, but I promise there's a big part of you that's going to be a piece of that.
I'm confident that's true. Yeah, it's funny, Scott. I was looking at all these different avenues to go, right, and I met with this company early, and I continued to communicate with the Advantage it's a division of Forbes that's does book publishing for people like me who aren't established authors, but they can work under the Forbes brand and team and all that kind of stuff, which is great. And there's certainly an expense associated with all that, but I sat down and did the math on like what it would take for me to be good at doing this myself, and immediately, my director of operations says, "You're not allowed to do this yourself." Like that's just you're out, man. We're handing this off. So that was it. And I think my delay on making that decision is part of the delay on getting the book released. But
I think leveraging people that have done something thousands of times versus you doing it yourself is probably a good idea.
well, it's also practicing what I preach, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the bottom
Yes.
line. It was also just more in line with what I would advise anybody to do.
Chad, I want to ask, what question or thing should we have talked about that I didn't ask you or we didn't talk about?
Man, that's a good question. And maybe it's just a time of year thing that occurs to me, but this time of year when you and I are recording this, it's about to be end of 23 and into 24, right? So this time of year has me always thinking a lot about goals and how companies should establish goals for the coming year. And I thought that may be something of value to talk about for your audience.
Definitely. Let's do it.
So I was talking with somebody yesterday who put this, really succinctly. What I would say the wrong way to do it is to look at what you did last year, kind of stretch a little bit, and say, let's do that this year and keep moving, right? And
I don't like that.
I don't like that either, but it's very, very common. And so I certainly have no problem with the idea of targeting year-over-year growth, but it's got to be rooted in some, method, some form of reality and some structure that helps to make it viable. So what I recommend contractors do is they first, pause and take stock of their backlog. And they don't just look at their backlog, but they look at when their backlog is going to go. And that means going line by line through every project and saying, when's the start date and what's the estimated duration on all of these projects, and figuring out in advance what the backlog and when the backlog looks like it's going to hit. So that's the first thing that you do. And that's going to help you to understand what the baseline generally will be coming into the year. Now take that number and take a certain percentage off of it, depending on what size projects you're doing and the duration of the projects. If your projects take weeks, you probably don't have to do what I just said. But if your project takes months, 6, 12 months, I would encourage you to take whatever your backlog is and cut it down by 10, maybe even 20%. Because it's construction. A certain percentage of that is going to slide. I wish it wouldn't, but you know it will too.
Does all the time.
It's just normal. And so you take that backlog, let's pretend it's $10 million. We got $10 million. It looks like it's going to hit next year based on that method of, start date, duration, and the total value of these jobs. And we take and say, okay, it's going to be 10 million. I'm going to say, figure it's going to be 8. Right? There's your starting point. Then the next thing I'd like you to do is to take a look at your pipeline. Every job that you are currently pursuing. Again, I was talking to a contractor client of ours earlier this week. They're a new client of ours, and they were like, every job we're pursuing, we got 350 jobs we're pursuing. I said, no, you don't. You got 350 jobs that you bid and you have no idea where they stand. Go clean up your pipeline and figure out the 60 that actually have legs and come talk to me in a week. Right? A week? Yeah. You and everyone on your estimating team, call them and say, I'm guessing this job's no longer on the street because we haven't heard from you. And I guarantee you that list of 350 is going to be cut in half
Shrinks
or
quick.
worse. Right?
Yeah.
And they're like,
doubt.
all right. Right. So you take your pipeline, which is your list of projects that are alive. They're real. These are actual projects that you have a shot of winning. And then you apply a percentage of likelihood to winning these projects. Another method is to just take the ones that you really believe you're going to win, that you have compelling reasons to believe you're going to win, and leave everything else out. Either one of these I'm okay with, but the bottom line is you're going to end up with a combination of your existing backlog minus 10, 20%, depending on your, what you are. If you're a general contractor, I'd recommend it. If you're a window treatment contractor, it's probably not necessary, right? And then your pipeline stack on top of that. What that should give you is a kind of month-by-month projection of what my backlog plus my potential pipeline is for that time period. You got to do the same thing with pipeline. You got to guess at a start date and guess at a duration so that you can put this together. But what at least it gives you is some reasonable picture of what, if you add nothing else, you're likely to do this year. Once you do all of that, then you are in an actual place to establish some goals, right? And
created reality that you're building
correct.
it off of reality.
Correct. And then you can establish some goals, but once you establish goals, you got to be able to clearly articulate how you're going to get there. So if you say between my backlog and pipeline, I'm projecting 10 million and my goal is to get to 25 million next year, I'm going to say how. You got to show me that path, because I'm not buying it. But then once you have all of that, this is the one step that I can't believe how few people do, Scott, but it is so critical, is after you do all that, you got to stop and you have to do manpower planning. And I don't care if you're a general contractor or a trade contractor, manpower just means different things in both of those environments, but you know what I mean. It's the personnel you're going to need to do the work. So do manpower planning matched up with that schedule, and establish an overhead budget for your business. Really establish an overhead budget.
That's the piece a lot of people miss, man, is the overhead allocation. I mean, and sometimes like we see these on projects too. I run a project for someone and say, okay, great. You got a 16% margin and it's 10% retainage. Just so you know, this project doesn't cash flow till you've been paid 85% of it. Well, what does that mean? It means you can't use a single nickel off of this job to do anything other than pay for job-related expenses. And in addition to that, you need to invest X amount of thousands of dollars to get it to that point. Well, I don't understand. But yeah, you can't use any money off this project at all other than pay for the labor for this project, pay for the material for this project. In addition to that, you need 20% of the project actually infused over that same period of time, before you're paid 85%, before it even cash flows itself. That's what I mean.
Yep.
And so, wow, they're like, wow, okay, like, where do I get how do I pay for insurance? How do I pay for the debt service? I'm like, that's my point. So like, that's what we got to figure out. Like, how are you going to be able to do that? And that's where you look at other projects, lines of credit. Maybe there's a service line business that, turns quicker, but you have to lay that overhead on your annualized plan and per project somewhere.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
fascinating. Yeah, the
It
goal
is.
the goal process can be done a lot of different ways, but number one, you got to have them. I think if you do nothing else on your goals, you hit the nail on the head. Build them off of reality. Don't build goals on what you hope to get and count on that, because that's just a bad strategy. That can get uncomfortable real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't have I pick no fights with people who like to have a vision. Visions are for far enough out that you don't need a plan necessarily, right? Like if you want to say to yourself, man, 10 years from now, I want to be $100 million contractor with a 10% net, and employing this many people in these geographies. That's awesome. You don't have to have a step-by-step plan to back into that. That's a cool thing to, hang on your wall and talk about with your troops and, that type of stuff. That's all good. But in terms of this year's goals, they got to start with reality. You have to start with reality. And then if you really want to end up there, that budget is essential, because
Yeah.
otherwise you'll get to the end of the year and you'll have spent way more than you intended to spend. And even though you might have hit the top line, the bottom line is not where you want it, which is how it ends up in that story of like, man, we're just treading water every year. We can't seem to make
You're
any more
right.
money. Because every year you keep spending too much damn
Well,
money.
the other thing too is if you do have a good goal, that's a vision to be $100 million company with 10% net profit 10 years from now, you do need to build backwards from there. But right now, if you're at year one, or step one is get to $2 million. And then steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 that you're going to run that year is, how do you go from where you're at right at this minute to $2 million? And you have to be very detailed and very specific, but you don't need to know figure out how to get to 2 to 8 yet. You're just trying to get
That's
to
right.
2, but you need a very detailed plan how to get to 2. And then when you're at 2, you start building your plan to 4 and to 6 and to 8. And the next thing you know, you'll actually be at $100 million. But
That's I totally agree. I mean, you have to, what you're building a plan for has to be something that you can uh, tangibly see and control. I find that people have a really hard time doing that for any longer than 3 years.
yeah, no, and it's going to stretch. You need to be very specific for the year, 2 years, even 3 years out. There's going to be some tweaks based on how you finish the first year, obviously. But Chad, man, I got to thank you a lot for being on the show, man. And how do people find you? How can someone say, you know what, I love what that guy said. He makes a ton of sense. How do I listen to more of that? And how can I even find him?
So if you go to our website, wellbuiltconsulting.com, sign up for our newsletters. There's newsletters that I write, that Matt Verderamo writes, that John Livingston writes. These are all just really, really, really smart people on our team, who have different takes on the industry, who have their own individual experiences to lend, which is great. So that would be the starting point, would be to go to wellbuiltconsulting.com. Check us out, the Morning Huddle Construction Show. The Morning Huddle Construction Show, you can look that up on LinkedIn. You can look it up on YouTube. You can also look it up on wherever you get your podcasts. So the Morning Huddle Construction Show on that. I'd say those would be the places I'd steer people. And of course, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to follow or connect on LinkedIn, Chad Prinkey is my name.
Love it. Chad, thank you so much for being part of our Construction MF'ers show. And I really appreciate our friendship, the work we've done together. And I look forward to, when you do get the plan for the book, I look forward to helping you get that out to the world. So let me
I
know.
appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. As soon as I have it in hand, you'll have it in hand. And I look forward to doing maybe some speaking together next year. I think that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for you and I have some good plans for that. I'm looking forward to doing a couple live events as a little quick teaser for the audience. Chad and I have started to lay out some things that we're going to do next year, and I think they'll be cool and exciting. I'm confident people will like them a lot.
Same.
Well, everybody, I hope you liked the show. If you found value in this, please share the show. Let your friends know. Pass it along. Please, if you're on our YouTube channel, click subscribe. Follow me and Chad on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you there. We have a great website also you'll see this information on. You can connect with our newsletter and Chad's at wellbuiltconsulting.com, right? Perfect.
That's right.
All right, everybody, till next time, we'll see you later, and may God bless you. Take care.